Namasreshtham manumapi shachiputram atra svarupam rupam tasyagrajam urupurim maturim goshtavatim radha kundam girivaram ahoradhika madhavasam prapto yasya prasita kripaya Sri Gurum Tang Natosmi Alibhih paripalitah pravalitah Sanandamalokitah Pratyasham sumana phalodaya vidho Samodamamuditah Vrindaranya bhuvi prakasha madhura Sarvatishayi sriya Radha madhavayo pramodayatu mam Ulala sakalpadrumaha Jai Sri Rupa Sanatana Bhatta Raghunath Shri Jiva Gopala Bhatta Das Raghunath Choy Gosai Rakari Charana Bandhan Jaha Hoite Vighnanash Abhishta Puran Hare Krishna 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 Hare 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 Rama 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 Hare Hare. So we're continuing on here with the Priti Sandarbha. We're in the first Anuched. This is the third class, or third reading, let's say. As I've said before, my purpose here is self-edification. Actually, I'm going through the Priti Sandarbha now, and as I may have mentioned, I agreed to participate in this project with Satyanarayan Das Babaji. And I have, let's say, submitted that he is the authority on the Sandarbhas. And here and there I can perhaps improve the translation a little bit. And I'm not the final word either. After me comes another Navadip Das, who is a very capable Sanskritist on his own right and has been working with Babaji for far longer than I have. And so we are the core of the team. Let's say the core of the team is Satyanarayan Das Ji himself, and then myself and Navadvip, and then a number of other people who are involved in proofreading and typesetting and all the rest of the work that goes into producing a book. And these books are now being made available in e-book form. So we have the hard copy, these are very, very nice and very pucka editions that are published and printed in Germany. Very first class productions. And they will last many lifetimes. They're not the kind of book that you see printed in India, which fall apart just by looking at them. All right, so we are in the section 1, Anuched 1, which is a long Anuched, introductory to Priti Sandarbha. In the first section, we saw that Priti is that happiness and the removal of suffering, that these are the basic goals of human life, and that the promise is that love for Krishna, love for Bhagavan, will result in the ultimate removal of all miseries and in the attainment of final and ultimate beatitude, the highest level of beatitude that is available to the individual soul. So that subject has gone on. The second section was, the second part was to state that, using the Taittiriya Upanishad, that the ultimate truth is by nature bliss. And that is why, upon attaining the Supreme Absolute Truth, that one becomes blissful. And that will be repeated again. Now this third section, this third part of the first Anucheta tells us that knowledge of the Supreme Truth, knowledge of the Tattva. So the word Tattva has been used since the beginning of the Sandarbhas. And the Tattva-Sandarbha, the idea was that we're going to say, on the basis of, and it's quoted again in this chapter, in this section here, is the Vadanti verse. So the Vadanti verse is a very important verse in the Sandarbhas because it presents the idea that the one truth is non-dual, and which means it is one without a second, but that one reality can be interpreted or understood according to different individuals, according to their kind of sadhana, and according to their kind of conception. Ye yata mamam prapadyante tangs tataiva bhajamyaham. It's a very famous verse from the Bhagavad Gita, which also states that God reveals himself differently to different individuals according to their particular individual makeup and their samskaras. So now we have that. This is that. That Vadanti Tattva Vidas Tattva. We'll see it. It will come up in this Anucheta again. But that's the word that we use. One of the words that we use to mean absolute truth, absolute reality, supreme truth, supreme reality. All these different words that are bandied about to express what the ultimate goal of knowledge of the Sambandha Tattva is. So here it says that not I've written this myself, and so this is being tested now as I do this oral presentation here on YouTube. That knowledge of the Tattva produces self-knowledge and ultimate freedom from all suffering. So the point is that self-knowledge, in other words, the individual jiva's knowledge of himself, and the release from suffering are secondary effects. That the primary goal is to encounter the Supreme Truth, and by encountering the Supreme Truth, the other potential goals of life, let's say, self-knowledge, ātma-jñāna, and or svātma-jñāna, which we can use, the term that will be used, and ultimate freedom from all suffering, that this ātyantika duḥkhā-nivṛttiś, which is the expression that's being used. So let's see what he says here. So this is where in a sense, what Jiva Goswami is doing here in the first Anucheta is reprising many of the things that were stated earlier in the other Sandarbhas to put the Priti Sandarbha in the proper context. So here he says, atha jīvaś tadīyo'pi tad-ajñāna-saṁsargābhāva-yuktatvena tan-māyā-parābhūtaḥ sann ātma-svarūpa-jñāna-lopān māyā-kalpitopādhy-āveśāc cānādi-saṁsāra-duḥkhena sambadhyate ity parama-tattva-sandarbhādāv eva nirūpitam asti. So I'll read the translation that we have here. An individual living being, although belonging to the Supreme, so the word there was tadīyo'pi, so it belongs, so the word tadiya is being used. So rather than saying that the jiva is one with the Supreme, the jiva is an infinitesimal portion, mamayvangsho jiva loke, jiva bhuta sanatanaha, that is an angsha. So if it's an angsha, it's an eternal angsha. It's not jiva bhuta sanatana, it's eternally a portion, and it's a tiny portion, but at the same time, it's his portion, a portion of the Supreme Absolute Truth. So tadīya here doesn't really, it refers back to tattva. So taj-jñāna-saṁsargābhāva-yuktatvena. So although belonging to the Supreme, being endowed with beginningless ignorance about it, by it we mean the tattva, the Supreme, and being overpowered by its māyā, becomes united with beginningless material misery because of the loss of knowledge of its svarūpa and because of its absorption into the upadhis created by māyā. So let's do that again. So atha jīvaś tadīyo'pi taj-jñāna-saṁsargābhāva-yuktatvena tan-māyā-parābhūtaḥ sann ātma-svarūpa-jñāna-lopān māyā-kalpitopādhy-āveśāc cānādi-saṁsāra-duḥkhena sambadhyate ity parama-tma-sandarbhādāv nirūpitam asti. So the idea, so it's just giving a general description of the situation of the jiva. The jiva is an angsha, it's a part of the Supreme. It belongs to the Supreme, being a part of its energies. But it's endowed, so the expression here is a little odd, but it says that yuktatvena tad-jñāna-saṁsargābhāva. So samsarga really means connection. So, and the word abhava is a bit of a technical term, as we'll see in the commentary. So abhava means that it's without. So it doesn't have any knowledge of the Supreme. So because of that, being somehow or another connected with this beginningless ignorance of the Supreme, and being defeated or overcome by the material energy, by māyā, that it loses any knowledge of its own true identity. Or let's say that any knowledge of the true identity of the self has been lost. So māyā-kalpitopādhy-āveśāc, and the being overcome or covered over by the upadhis, by the false identifications that result from, that have been created or imagined by māyā, by the illusory energy. It's bound by beginningless suffering in the repeated births and deaths of samsara. So that's the situation of the jiva. So this is the language that Jiva Goswami is using here is definitely designed in such a way that we won't be that we won't become confused by Mayavad ideas that the Brahma Jiva Ekatva, or that the Jiva is Brahma itself covered by Māyā. From the beginning, that idea of tadīya, that it belongs to, it's not identical with, but it's a part of Brahman. And it has this beginningless ignorance. So this beginningless ignorance is an important point, and this is also something that Satyanarayana Dasji has really pointed out repeatedly ever since he got involved in that famous fall of the Jiva controversy. So this is not something that goes unrepeated in Jiva Goswami's work. He's saying that there was never a time when the Jiva knew Brahman, and this will be, or Jiva knew Bhagavan, or the Jiva knew God. So the idea that the Jiva was once with God in paradise, or in Vaikuntha, or anywhere else, and enjoying the bliss of service to Krishna, and that somehow or another he fell into the material world, or it fell into the material world, that is not going to be accepted, and that is why he has this expression that anadi. So even though the word forgetfulness is used, and even the word here, it has this ātma-svarūpa-jñāna-lopān. So lopa is usually used to mean something that was and then got covered over or lost. but it's simply that lop is an absence of self-knowledge, an absence of knowledge of the Supreme, and thereby an absence of knowledge of himself, and thereby a suffering that has gone on since time immemorial. So all these things, lack of knowledge of the Supreme, lack of knowledge of the self, and suffering in the material world, all these things have gone on since time immemorial. So the references are there in the parama-tattva-sandarbha. So tata idam labhyate. Parama-tattva-sākṣātkāra-lakṣaṇaṁ taj-jñānameva paramānanda-prāptiḥ saiva parama-puruṣārtha ity. So here he's coming back. So now we have this. He says, so therefore, this is to be understood from this information, that to have knowledge of the tattva, to have knowledge of the Supreme Truth, by direct experience. So sakshatkara, the word we already mentioned in one of the previous lectures, or readings, let's call them readings, that direct experience, or sakshatkara. So that we'll have more about sakshatkara later. So that knowledge of the Supreme Truth in the form of direct experience of the Supreme Truth is the attainment of the highest bliss. So again, we come back to the idea of happiness, and this is paramānanda-prāptiḥ, as we've been talking already with the Taittiriya Upanishad and so on. That to have knowledge, or to have consciousness, to be conscious of the Supreme Person, and sakshatkara means sensually, right? Saksha, with the eyes, to see directly, to have direct darshan of the Supreme Truth. So we can call it encounter or direct darshan of the Supreme Truth. That is the attainment of the Supreme Bliss, and therefore that Supreme Bliss is the parama-puruṣārtha. So we talk about parama-puruṣārtha, and we have the parama-puruṣārtha. Mukti is the we have dharma, artha, kama, moksha, and now we have this parama-puruṣārtha. All right. So from this, the following is understood: only knowledge in the form of intuitive experience. So you've got intuitive experience. I think we'll change that. Of the supreme reality is equivalent to the attainment of the Supreme Bliss. So as the intuitive experience, I just was explaining sakshatkara and intuitive experience there. Not exactly the same. Intuitive experience, we might talk about aparokṣānubhūti and other terms that are used by the Vedantins, but sakshatkara is a little more concrete, more sensual. Bhakti is sensual. Is equivalent to the attainment of the Supreme Bliss, and this indeed is the supreme goal to be attained. So svātma-jñāna-pravṛttiḥ duḥkhātyanta-nivṛttiś nidāne tad-ajñāne gate sati svata-eva sampadhyate. So now the second point that is being made, this is the principal point of the section. The svātma-jñāna-pravṛttiḥ. So there's actually an interesting alternative reading here, which is that svātma-jñāna-nivṛttiś. So the ignorance of the self, the removal of the ignorance. Some of these readings are potentially going back to Jiva Goswami himself. He edited his own work. But here anyway, it says the reading that we've accepted, or the reading that's been accepted by Puridas, is that svātma-jñāna-pravṛttiḥ. So svātma-jñāna-pravṛttiḥ, so that pravṛttiḥ here means engagement. So engagement in self-knowledge, or to have, or to I would assume that this interesting use of the word pravṛttiḥ here, that svātma-jñāna, just means to stop, but pravṛttiḥ means to start. But where does it stop? Does it stop? Well, obviously, Jiva Goswami's point is that once you have knowledge of the self, it doesn't come to an end, and that will come to because we're talking about abhav. So we have samsargābhāva, we have these terms that are being used, and they've been used frequently in here. And as I was just saying, that for Satyanarayana Das, this idea of that prag-abhava. So the prag-abhava means that this knowledge of the Supreme, it did not exist before, prag-abhava. And but it can come to an end. That's the point. Prag-abhava is an absence or a non-existence that can come to an end. Oops, what do we got going here? Excuse me. All right. So prag-abhava, and then we have the atyanta-abhava, or it says this is the abhav, the dhvaṁsābhāva or pradhvaṁsābhāva. So pradhvaṁsābhāva means that you have an abhav, an absence or a non-existence that can come to an end. So the pradhvaṁsābhāva, so this will be just talked about here in one moment. So let's just remember that these ideas of abhav, they come from the Nyaya Shastra, from Tarka Shastra. So here he's saying that svātma-jñāna-pravṛttiḥ, so engagement in self-knowledge, or the so the point that I'm trying to make here is that the use of the word pravritti indicates that this self-knowledge is something that goes on without end. And duḥkhātyanta-nivṛttiś, and then this ultimate atyanta, this final release from all misery, from all unhappiness, that this comes about when? Well, he uses here, nidane tad-ajñāne gate sati. So when the ignorance of the tattva, when ignorance of the tattva is gone, gate sati, it is the nidana, it is the original cause or the source. So these two things, ignorance of the self and suffering in the material world, both of these are a result of ignorance of the supreme truth. The point being made here is that the supreme knowing of the supreme truth means that the other two things go. So swata eva sampadhyate. So there, swata eva means automatically. So these things, and sampadhyate means that it's a treasure that's attained. So this treasure of these two treasures of self-knowledge and freedom from misery, that these come about as automatic results of attaining the parama-puruṣārtha, which is sākṣātkāra of the Supreme Brahman, who is bliss. So what does he say then? Well, there's two things. The purvasyaha parama-tattva-svaprakāṣatābhivyakti lakṣana-mātrātmakatvat uttarasyascha dhvaṁsābhāva-rūpatvād anashwaratvam iti. Okay, so both of these, self-knowledge and freedom from misery, both of these are anashwara. In other words, they don't come to an end. Why is that? Well, knowledge of the self is characterized. Let's read the translation. The former is imperishable, the former meaning. So let's just read the translation. When the root cause of suffering, namely ignorance about the supreme reality, is removed, then engagement in self-knowledge and the ultimate removal of misery take place automatically. The former is imperishable because it is nothing other than a symptom of the supreme reality's self-luminosity becoming manifest, while the latter is imperishable since it has the nature of post-destruction non-existence or post-destruction absence. So that's the terminology that has been coined by our editorial team to express the meaning of dhvaṁsābhāva. So that idea that once it's gone, it's gone. Once you have become free from material misery through knowledge of the Supreme, through direct contact with the Supreme, it can never go away. So that was the point about knowledge of Krishna. If once one has knowledge of Krishna, one can never lose it. Once one becomes aware of one's true identity, fully aware through direct realization, not simply jnana, but vijnana, when one actually knows what one's real identity is through having come into contact with the Supreme Absolute Truth. The point is that know the Supreme Absolute Truth. The work that we do is to do bhakti to Krishna. The knowledge of ourself, just like that, it says that bhakti pareshanubhavo viraktiranyatra syad trika eka esha eka kalaha prapadyamanasya yatashnato syuh bhukti tushti pushti kshuddhapayonugasa. Famous verse from the Bhagavatam. It says that as one engages in bhakti, that one gets pareshanubhava, one gets direct experience of the Supreme Truth, and vairagyam, viraktir anyatra, so indifference to anything else. Why is that indifference to anything else? Well, because once one has self-knowledge, then the upadhis, the coverings over the self, and the ignorance, that is the illusion of Maya, those things are, one becomes indifferent to those things. So self-knowledge is a consequence, just like if one eats, so prapadyamanasya, so if one surrenders to the Supreme Truth, then first thing that comes is bhakti. But the three of them are actually simultaneous. That's the point of the Bhagavatam verse, that devotion, in knowledge, experience or knowledge of the Supreme, and indifference to the rest of the world, that those come simultaneously, just like when one eats, one is nourished, one feels satisfaction, and one loses one's hunger. So the idea of that the post-destruction non-existence. So if the jiva had ever known Krishna, then there would be no question of a pradangsa abhav. So pradangsa abhav means that it comes to an end and it's absolute. The end, it never stops being at an end. It doesn't come back. The example is given: if a pot is broken, that pot can never become a clay pot. You go to the clay pot, it's broken. There's no magic that will bring that clay pot back again. It's gone. When a person dies, that person is dead, doesn't come back. That's the pradangsa abhav. So let's go on here. I'm going to, this section is obviously longer than the previous two, so we're going to go on a bit. So here we have this referral to these four verses. So he says, Uktancha purvasyaha parama-puruṣārthatvaṁ dharmasya hyāpavargyasya ity-ādinā tac-chraddadhānā munayo jñāna-vairāgya-yuktayā paśyantyātmani ca-atmanam bhaktya śruta-gṛhītayā. So the purvasya was the svātma-jñānam. So svātma-jñānam, so the svātma-jñānam. So now this svātma-jñāna-pravṛttiḥ, there's a little problem with the translation, and I had to look at today and see whether we can come to a proper conclusion about it. Swa-atma, it could be either swa plus atma. In that case, it would be the self and the paramatma. So svātma-jñānam, knowledge of the self and the paramatma. Or it could be swatma, this one's own self. Right? So I picked the latter, but the former is also a possibility. Well, Jiva Goswami here, he says that these four verses from the second chapter of the first canto, which are important verses, they've been discussed in Priti Sandarbha also, with the full commentary, and with Sridhar Swami's commentary. So I don't know if we can maybe read the translations, but the idea is that, you may have heard these verses. It's a dharmasya hyāpavargyasya narthorthayopakalpate narthasya dharmaikantasya, and so on. It's this verse of these verses, but those are not the ones that he's focusing on here. Although in the translation we're giving all four verses, but the verse that he's really concentrating us on is the last of the four, which is because this tat, so tat-chraddadhānā munayo. So because the tat is referring to the Padanti tattva vidas tattvam yaj-jnānam advayam brahmeti paramatmeti bhagavaniti shadyate. That's the verse immediately preceding this one. So it says tac-chraddadhānā. So having faith in that, having faith in that supreme truth. So he's talking about on the level of sadhana. So the sadhakas, the munis, they jñāna-vairāgya-yuktayā paśyanti-ātmani ca-ātmanam bhaktya śruta-gṛhītayā. So through bhakti that has been attained via hearing, sometimes that's separated, śruta-gṛhīta, the devotion that is both, that has been heard, it came from hearing, and is also grihita, has been accepted by voluntarily by the sadhaka. So that the munis, having faith in the tattva, they engage in bhakti, which through hearing from guru and from shastra, and have taken it up voluntarily through the will, and that bhakti has been accompanied by knowledge and renunciation. They paśyanti ātmani ca-ātmanam. They see within the self the supreme self. So here you have the idea, and Jiva Goswami is taking that as praman for the idea that by seeing the supreme, one sees the supreme within the self, and therefore the two are simultaneously. When one sees the supreme in the self, then obviously one is seeing the self. And the example has been given already of the sun, if you recall, in yesterday's reading. There it was said Jyotish Twabat. Says that the Martanda Mandala. Martanda Mandala. The idea was that Vivida Swarupa Dharma Vatopi, that the Supreme has many different qualities, many different attributes, but ultimately all those attributes boil down to Ananda. And in the same way, all the attributes, just like the attributes of the sun, although those attributes may be multifarious, that they can be boiled down and reduced to one thing, which is light. So just as when the light of the sun rises, then one sees oneself, and one can see everything around one, everything falls into place, and one understands and sees the world around him in the same way, and he can see himself and see his body in the light. So in the same way, when one is in the light of the bliss of the Transcendental Supreme, then one understands oneself, and everything, the ignorance or maya, the illusion of maya, is all dissipated by the effulgence of the Supreme, the Maha of the Supreme. So that, well, I won't read. If you want, you'll be able to read those, the four verses. We'll maybe do it later, but the one is it. The sages, endowed with faith in that absolute, see the self in their own self through devotion accompanied by knowledge and renunciation acquired through the sense of hearing. So that's the first point. The point was that to have knowledge of the self comes automatically through knowledge of the Supreme. And the second was sarva-duḥkha-nivṛttiś tatraivoktā vidyate hṛdaya-granthis chidyante sarva-samṣayāh kṣiyante chasya karmani drishta eva-atmanīśvare. So again, the similar expression, but the idea is that vidyate hṛdaya-granthi, chidyante vidyate hṛdaya-granthi. Well, the knots that bind the heart to this world. Vidyate hṛdaya-granthi. Let's see that translation. Only after seeing the Ishvara, the Supreme Being, within one's self, the knot in the heart is cut asunder, all doubts are dispelled, and the reaction to all karma is destroyed. Karmic reactions are all destroyed. So this is a good point that he's making. It's making the same point. It's making there's 2 points. This is the second. the point that all material suffering is eliminated by primarily knowledge of the Supreme. So this is the bhakti process. Bhakti process is not like psychiatry, right? Trying to find the causes, the sources of your misery by going back into your early childhood, or even going to previous lifetimes, birth, rebirth therapy. Or, what my mother did to me, or what my father did to me when I was 3 years old, or how I was toilet trained, or all the rest of it, the traumas that I experienced in my childhood. Of course, those are all karmas. Those are all our karma bandhan. But our attachments to the world, the hṛdaya-granthir, all of our doubts about our self-identity and about our purpose in life, and all the sufferings that arise from karma, all those things we become indifferent to them all once one has had a direct encounter of the Supreme. And here is used drishta evatmanishvare. We see Ishvara again, just like the previous one that said pashyanti atmani chatmanam. It was exactly the same idea. Drishta evatman. Once you've seen the Supreme within your heart, once you've had that sākṣātkāra, that parama-tattva-sākṣātkāra, then self-knowledge and liberation from the miseries of material life, the ātyantika duḥkhā-nivṛttiś, those two things are achieved. And there are two more quotes that he has here. The first one is Viṣṇu-purāṇe, which has nice language here, that nirastati shaya halada sukha bhāvaika-lakṣaṇaṁ bheshajama bhagavat-prāptiḥ ekānta-atyantiki mata. This is the same point, right? So bheshajam, so bhagavata-prāptiḥ, so attainment of Bhagavan. So this is the point here. He's in the previous verses. He had Ishvara, he had Atmanam. So Atmanam, Ishwaram, these are lesser. We want Bhagavan, right? And so here it says that Bhagavat Prapti, so attainment of Bhagavan, ekānta-atyantiki mata. So it's nirastati shayahlada. Here I'll give the translation. The attainment of Bhagavan is of the nature of supreme bliss, which defies all material happiness. It is without any break and unending. It is the medicine for material bondage. It is the cure for material bondage, right? So the as we had before, right? That nidane, the word nidane was used. That the nidana is the cause of this beginningless ignorance of the Supreme Lord, is the cause of our self-ignorance and the cause of our suffering. So once that has been removed, the other things are also removed. Tad abhave, tad abhava. Tad abhave, tad abhava. All right, so then there's one last quote here in the section. So this is again the Taittiriya Shruti. So we've already seen this verse, but in the first part, there's two lines to the verse. We had that before. Yato vacho nivartante aprapya manasa saha anandam brahmano vidvan nakutaschana vidyati. This verse has actually been quoted twice in the Taittiriya Upanishad, in that same Brahmananda-valli that we were talking about yesterday. So the Brahmananda-valli, it's Brahmananda, so he talks about Ananda. So Ananda Brahmano, Anandam Brahmano Vidwan, one who knows the happiness of Brahman, Nakutaschana Bhivyati, has no fear from anything else. So that no fear from anything else, this is really the meaning that there's no suffering, that one is free from all material conditioning, because material conditioning comes vayam dvitiya-vinivesha taksya ishadapetasya viparyo smritihi. That when vayam dvitiya-vinivesha taksya, so that when we are absorbed, so the abhinivesh or the avesh into Maya, when we see dualities, it's exactly following the Taittiriya Upanishad, right? So that Taittiriya Upanishad, I don't think I have the verse out here, but I can't remember the exact word, but the wording comes that immediately after this was this, that we were talking about a little bit. So it says, na hyevanyat, ko hyevanyat, kath pranyat, yad esha anandaha, akasho nasyat, akashe nasyat, yadesha akashe anando nasyat. So if this all-pervading ananda of Brahma did not exist in the sky, this unlimited, if we were not somehow or another contained within Brahmananda, if we didn't have some intuitive understanding that our nature is joy, our nature is bliss, and that actually we belong in bliss, and so we seek out that bliss. Who would live? Why would we bother living if we didn't have some understanding that there is bliss at the end? There's a light at the end of the tunnel that's not a train coming to mow us down. That light at the end of the tunnel is the Brahma bliss. And if without that Brahma bliss, no one would bother to breathe. Why would we bother? We would commit suicide. We wouldn't bother. So here he says that Anandam Brahmano Vidvan. So in that particular passage, right after he's stated that, he goes into a discussion of fear. So in 2.7 and 2.8, so he's saying that one who sees duality, so as soon as one sees duality, then one has fear. So fear is taken as being the kind of the basis of our material condition, the fear of annihilation, the fear of death. And actually the Taittiriya Upanishad, there goes the Bisha Asmad Vayurvati. It says the wind blows out of fear. The sun rises out of fear. Yamaraj does his work out of mrityu. Does his work out of fear. So yad bibeti swayam bhayam, that even fear itself is afraid. So the entire world functions on the basis of fear. But one who has knowledge of the Supreme, one who has entered into the non-dual substance, knows the supreme truth. And what is that supreme truth? Well, I cited or referred to Premananda Baba's citation of the Taittiriya Upanishad while he's speaking of the Vrindavana Mahimamrita. And he comes to the ultimate conclusion. Where is that place? This full absorption for the Rasika Vaishnava is Radharani's Kunja Bhati. You can look it up. It's on my blog there. Vrindavan Mahimamrita 1.8, 1.7 and 1.8, those two verses. All right, so let me conclude. Let me just conclude by reading Babaji's commentary. So it's a little long, but I'll try to refrain from commenting here. An objection can be raised to the proposal that having attained the absolute in love, one will attain bliss and be free of misery. The jiva is a part of the absolute, tadīya, whose prominent nature is bliss. So it naturally follows that the jiva also must have some bliss inherent in it, since the part has the nature of the whole. Therefore, what need is there to find the absolute or its love? So one may think that this is the argument that self-knowledge, so this is that knowledge of oneself is adequate to understanding the absolute truth. This is actually yoga and the philosophy of the yogis, Yoga Sutra. So naturally it follows that the jiva must also have some bliss in itself. So therefore, what need is there to find the absolute or its love? One should know oneself, and that's adequate to the purpose. It's also the idea behind, let's say, the Freudian psychoanalysis, that most kinds of prescriptions for self-knowledge in the world. People will tell us it's inside you, that you have it. It's all within you, right? So just if you know yourself, that you can have what need is there to seek anything else outside yourself? Just seek within. So what need is there to find the absolute or its love? So in particular, as Vaishnavas, this idea of an other is necessary in order to make love possible. This is our guiding intuition. Love is already inside the jiva, but at present it is covered by Maya. This appears to be said by Krishna himself, who has has agyanena avritam jnanam, tena muhyanti jantavaha, jnanena tu tad-ajñānam yeshāng nashitam atmanaha, tesham adityavad jnanam prakashayati tatparam. So if you get rid of the ignorance of the self, that you can get that the knowledge of the Supreme will follow, right? The jnana of the jiva is covered by ajnana, and thus they are bewildered. If this covering is removed, then the jnana will shine like the sun. So in response, it is said that a part does not necessarily have all the qualities of the whole. So Babaji's argument is good here. So in response, it is said that a part does not necessarily have all the qualities of the whole. Nails and hair are a part of the whole of the individual, but they do not possess consciousness. You can trim them without feeling any pain. Furthermore, the principle of a part having the qualities of the whole applies only when the qualities of the whole are homogeneously distributed, as in the ocean, for instance. For example, this principle cannot be applied to a house. Doors have different qualities from the bricks. Different parts have different qualities, but the house possesses all the qualities of its parts, and even something more. The whole is greater than the sum of the parts. One can live in the house, but not in a door or a brick. Even in the case of the ocean, a drop does not have all of the ocean's qualities. One can swim, surf, and dive in the ocean, but not in a drop. Furthermore, the jiva is only an atomic part of the tatastha Shakti and does not have the qualities of the bahiranga and antaranga Shaktis. So hopefully people who are following here have already sufficient knowledge to know what this means. So neither the gunas of prakriti nor priti are present in a jiva because these belong to the bahiranga and antaranga Shaktis respectively. So here again we have the point about priti is not present in the jiva because that priti belongs to the antaranga Shakti. It belongs to the Swarup Shakti of Krishna, and there are three different Shaktis. The jiva is a tatastha Shakti. He's neither part of the antaranga nor a part of the bahiranga Shaktis. And so the jiva, as long as he's covered by the bahiranga Shakti, he considers himself to be part of that. But therefore he doesn't have the gunas of prakriti in him. The jiva does not have the gunas of prakriti. If you read the Yoga Sutra, you'll understand, or Sankhya Yoga, Sankhya philosophy. The Sankhya philosophy is very clear. The Purusha is distinct from Prakriti. So we accept that principle in our Vaishnava doctrine. But the Yoga Sutra and Sankhya philosophy don't go far enough because they don't have a concept of the Antaranga Shakti. So the Antaranga Shakti, Priti, is a quality of the Antaranga Shakti. So this divine love for Krishna is not something that exists within the soul and can be uncovered. It's something that has to be imbued into the soul through bhaktya śruta-gṛhītayā. It's something that comes from shruti, it comes from hearing, it comes from the grace of the pure devotee and from the grace of Krishna. Guru Krishna prasade pai bhakti lata bij. Therefore, Sri Jiva writes that the jiva's ignorance or ajnana is a type of absence that has no beginning, samsargābhāva. Although purely spiritual by nature, the jiva is neither aware of itself nor of the supreme reality. Rather, a jiva identifies with the acquired mind-body complex. This ignorance of the jiva's true identity has no beginning and is thus not caused by any action of the jiva, nor of the tattva, nor of anyone else. So there's no ultimate cause. It's the way it is. That is the situation, the existential situation of the jiva. It's not your fault that you're here, but once you're here, you start creating your own mess. But it's not caused by the tattva, it's not caused by the supreme. So this is, of course, a big problem, especially in Western theology, the idea of theodicy, blaming God for our suffering. Don't blame God for our suffering. Don't blame yourself for your suffering. Don't blame anybody else for your suffering. Your suffering is a condition into which you have been placed. Of course, once you're here, then you participate in the program and you cause your suffering to increase, but that is another problem. Ultimately, it is saṁsargābhāva. It is prag-abhāva. It has no beginning. So such a conditioning by ignorance seems illogical. A conscious being does not know its true identity. However, it is possible by the influence of Maya, as was discussed in Paramatma-Sandarbha, by the inconceivable power of Bhagavan, Maya can cover the intermediate potency despite being inferior to it. This is stated by Maitreya Muni while instructing Vidura. Such is Bhagavan's extrinsic potency, Maya, which contradicts all logic. For due to its influence, the living entity, who by nature is the controller or the ruler, Ishvara, the word Ishvara is used there, and liberated, experiences impoverishment and bondage. That's 379 if you want to look it up. This beginningless ignorance is sometimes described as the jiva's knowledge being covered by ignorance, as in Gita 5.15, which was quoted earlier. Agyānena avritam jnāna tena muhyanti jantavaha. Or as its bewilderment by Maya, as in Vyasadev's vision described in the beginning of the Bhagavatam, yaya sammohito jiva. Atmanam trigunatmakam paropi manute nartam tatkritam chabibhadyate. Bewildered by this intrinsic potency, yaya sammohito jivo. Atmanam trigunatmakam, the individual self, although transcendental, paropi, thinks of itself as consisting of the three gunas, and therefore undergoes the misery resulting from this identification. Usually we think of a covering as something positive. Sri Jiva Goswami, however, explains that the beginningless covering of the jiva is not a positive substance, but a type of absence called saṁsargābhāva. According to the Nyaya school of philosophy, absence or abhava is of two types, namely saṁsargābhāva and anyonya-abhāva. The first of these has three further divisions called prag-abhāva, pre-absence, pradvamsa-abhāva, post-absence, and atyanta-abhāva, or permanent absence. So the word, the idea here between the three is that the prag-abhāva we discussed already didn't exist before, but can come to an end. Pradvamsa-abhāva means that it existed, but can come to an end. So in the case of ignorance, that ignorance can come to an end. Once it's removed, it's gone. And the last one is atyanta-abhāva. That's things like the horns on a rabbit. A horn on a rabbit never existed. It can exist. You might imagine it, but that doesn't mean that it exists in your imagination, but not in reality. And then the anyonya-abhāva means that one thing does not exist in another, like that. So one thing does not exist in this, and this does not exist in that. And so there's a mutual absence or a mutual non-existence of things. So the word samsarga-abhāva in this anucheda refers to the prag-abhāva, or pre-absence, in other words, an absence that comes to an end. So this prag-abhāva is the non-existence of an object, quality, or action before it comes into being. It has no beginning, but comes to an end as soon as the object, quality, or action is produced or manifested. The pre-absence is a conditioned or bound jiva is that of knowledge of the absolute reality, which includes knowledge about the jiva itself. Thus, the meaning, so knowledge of the absolute reality includes knowledge of the jiva itself. So, just to go off on a tangent slightly, the idea that as in Raganuga Bhakti, for instance, the idea that one engages in one's swarup, because one takes a swarup in order to serve the absolute truth. So one's identity, let's say as a Sakya or whatever, as a Kanta or Manjari or whatever the particular identity that one chooses or one is bestowed by the Guru, that is consequential to the particular swarup of the Supreme Lord. This will come up later in Priti Sandarbha quite elaborately, so I'll not go into any detail here. So, thus the meaning is that a bound or conditioned jiva is ignorant of the absolute reality as well as itself, and this ignorance has no beginning. In this state of ignorance, the jiva considers itself to be the mind-body complex, which is an external covering and a product of the three gunas of Maya. While ignorant about the absolute reality, and also ignorant of its own true nature, a jiva identifies with and becomes absorbed in the mind and physical body, which are products of Maya. Ignorance thus has two parts to it. The first is the negative part, the beginningless absence of knowledge about Bhagavan and the self. And the second is the outcome of the first and takes the form of wrong knowledge about oneself. This is sometimes termed avidya or ajnana. Thus, such a jiva under the influence of Maya is devoid of devotion to Bhagavan, the absolute reality personified. This is stated as the cause of its being influenced or covered by Maya. Maya has three gunas, namely sattva, or luminosity, rajas, the kinetic potency, and tamas, or inertia. Under the influence of these three gunas, people have different belief systems. This is described in the beginning of the 16th chapter of Bhagavad Gita. A person under their influence remains turned away, or parāṅmukha, from the absolute and suffers the outcome of his or her karma. Although ignorance, in other words, the jiva's covering by Maya, bondage and material suffering are all beginningless and do not have a cause and effect relationship in the more normal sense, they are depicted in that way for our understanding. So it's rather amusing that when I was watching that video of the Taittiriya Upanishad lectures by, Swamini Atma-Prakashananda, and she says the same thing, that we're in the conditioned state, we have to speak of things in a certain way that are, from the transcendental point of view, do not apply. Okay, so the implication behind calling it a covering is that bondage is not intrinsic to the jiva and can thus be dispelled. When it takes to devotion by the causeless grace of a devotee, its beginningless ignorance comes to an end. This results in knowledge about the Absolute and its own self, and the cessation of all suffering. This simultaneously results in the attainment of bliss. This attainment of bliss in the form of devotion or love is the supreme aim of life, the parama-puruṣārtha. Sri Jiva Goswami further says that both the attainment of knowledge as well as the cessation